terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners, be crucified, and on the third day rise again." But then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Sarah Bentley, our Director of Children's and Youth Ministry here at St. Mary's, relayed what happened in her Godly Play classroom this past week when she told the story of Easter to her class of 3 to 6-year-olds. Godly Play, if you're not familiar, is a Montessori-based way of teaching, and little objects are used to help tell the stories and focus the young people's attention. She'd made her way through the first part of the story. She'd made it through the Last Supper and Jesus' arrest. Everyone was staring intently down on the little space in the carpet where you lay the items after you've told the story. And she reached behind her to pull out one of the last pieces, and she pulled out this little plaque and turned it to face the children, and it was Jesus on the cross. And she said, as she turned it around to this little group, she heard an audible gasp. One child said, "Why'd they do that hymn?" Another wanted to know why he was dying. They were astonished, genuinely astonished. You see, they haven't heard the story so many times that they've become anesthetized to its shock. They haven't read about or seen on the news a lifetime of violence and anger and pain to numb them to the breathtaking violence of the cross. They were able to recognize the misery of Good Friday for what it is, horror and tragedy. As Sarah put it, it is truly surprising. It is truly surprising that God became a human and that human hung on a cross. But the surprises didn't end with Good Friday. Today we gather here to be jarred out of complacency by the empty tomb. No matter how many times in his ministry Jesus hinted at his death and his resurrection, there was really no way for his disciples to grasp what he was suggesting. Nothing in their experience would have provided them with a context for the one that they called Messiah to be killed and then rise from the dead. So when the women arrive at the tomb on that first Easter morning and find it empty, I imagine that they were completely and totally overwhelmed by dread and by wonder. The dread, because things had already gotten as bad as they thought they could possibly get. And now it seemed as if someone had stolen Jesus' body. Wonder, because something was amiss and they couldn't explain it. I imagine an audible gasp at the sight of that stone rolled away. And then there were the angels, the two men dressed in white, who appear in the tomb, and they redirect the women's wonder at them to its true source, to the risen Jesus. Why would you look for the living among the dead, they ask. It's so logical. Why would you look for the living among the dead? Yet it isn't so logical. Dead things don't come back to life. You know that. I know that. Flowering bulbs out in the yard, well, they appear to die after they've bloomed. They just go dormant underground, storing up energy. They will bloom again the next year because they've been alive the whole time. Trees drop their leaves. They look like they've died, but they've already set their buds for the next year. They leaf out again, not because of some miracle of resurrection, but because they've been alive the whole time. Little frogs that burrow into the mud in the side of a pond or a lake in the winter, and their hearts stop beating, only for them to thaw out in the springtime and hop away. They do so because they've been alive the whole time. Things that are dead do not come back to life. Yet, on that Easter morning, the impossible had come to pass. Jesus was dead. Not playing dead, not as if he were dead. He was dead. And then he was alive again. And those women were astounded. Returning to the other disciples to tell them what they'd learned, they find an audience incredulous to their good news. You see, the disciples had also been jaded by this unexpected turn of events. They thought that Jesus was the Messiah, but surely the Messiah wouldn't allow himself to be killed like some common criminal. Peter, however, is rattled by the women's words, and so he runs to the tomb to see for himself, and stooping to look inside that little cave, I can hear his breath catch. It is true. As one writer puts it, Peter then staggers his way back to the disciples to confirm the women's report. All the while, he must have been struggling with the implications of what he'd seen, not only for him, not only for the disciples, but for the whole world. So perhaps this year we will allow Easter to surprise us as well. We will stagger from this church today to tell an incredulous world that God has triumphed, that death has no hold upon us or them. Despite the death and the decay that we see all around us, despite the misery and despair run rampant, despite those who call us crazy for believing such an unbelievable tale, we leave here today fed by that food of eternity, emboldened to bear witness to the audacious truth of Easter. The world doesn't need us to go out there and be Pollyannas, urging joy where none could possibly be found, responding to hurt with empty platitudes. The world needs resurrection people to affirm in their own lives that God is the God of life, who affirm that pain is part of life, but that it does not get the last word. Christ is alive, and in him, so are we.